The first clap of thunder rolled across the afternoon sky like a warning from heaven itself, and Reed Holloway knew he had less than 2 hours before the storm arrived. His old pickup truck rattled down the dirt road, coughing black smoke as it climbed the hill toward a weather-beaten farmhouse that looked one strong wind away from collapse. The clouds above were growing darker by the minute. Weather reports had called it the worst storm of the season, but Reed wasn't thinking about the storm. That he was thinking about the overdue rent notice sitting on his kitchen table. That he was thinking about the nearly empty refrigerator. Most of all, he was thinking about his 8-year-old son, Nolan, who had smiled that morning and asked whether they could finally afford a birthday cake this year. Reed had promised they would. He just had no idea how. Before we continue, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner if you believe kindness still matters and that one good deed can change a life forever. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts around the world. The farmhouse belonged to an elderly woman named Harriet Vale. At least that's what the work order said. The county assistant's office had posted an emergency repair request after neighbors reported that part of her roof had begun collapsing. Most contractors refused the job. The house was too old, the payment was too small, the storm was too close, but Reed couldn't afford to refuse any work, not anymore. 3 years earlier, everything had been different. He had owned a successful roofing company. He had a beautiful wife. A comfortable home. A future. Then a drunk driver ran a red light. In a single terrible night, Reed lost his wife and nearly lost himself. The grief consumed him, the business collapsed, bills piled up, friends slowly disappeared. Eventually, all he had left was Nolan and a stubborn determination to keep moving forward. Some days that determination felt like the only thing keeping him alive. When he arrived at the farmhouse, he immediately saw how bad the damage was. Large sections of shingles had blown away. Several support beams were exposed, rainwater stains spread across the ceiling, visible through broken boards. One direct hit from the coming storm would destroy the house. Harriet opened the front door before he could knock. She looked to be in her late 70s, her gray hair was tied neatly behind her head. Despite the condition of the house, she stood with remarkable dignity, the kind of quiet dignity that made people instinctively respect her. She smiled warmly. Reed noticed something unusual. She wasn't frightened. Most homeowners facing a storm and a collapsing roof would be panicking. Harriet seemed strangely calm. As though she had weathered far worse storms in her life. Inside the house was simple. No luxury. No expensive decorations, just old photographs, antique furniture, and shelves filled with books. Reed got to work immediately. Hour after hour, he hauled materials, replaced damaged boards, reinforced supports, and secured new shingles. The summer heat was brutal. Sweat soaked through his shirt, his hands cramped, his knees ached, but he refused to stop. Every minute mattered. Dark clouds gathered overhead like mountains of charcoal. The wind began howling through the trees. Harriet occasionally brought him water and sandwiches. She watched him work with curious eyes, not the eyes of someone judging his skill, the eyes of someone studying his character. As the afternoon stretched on, Reed noticed something else. Despite living alone in an aging farmhouse, Harriet seemed unusually educated. Her conversations were thoughtful, her observations sharp. She asked questions about Nolan, about life, about grief, about resilience, questions most strangers never asked. For reasons he couldn't explain, Reed found himself opening up. He spoke about losing his wife, about struggling to raise Nolan, about trying to rebuild his life. Harriet listened carefully, never interrupting, never offering empty sympathy, just listening. Sometimes that was more comforting than words. By sunset, the roof was secure, not perfect, but strong enough to withstand the storm. Reed climbed down the ladder just as the first raindrops began falling. The wind intensified, lightning flashed across the horizon. Harriet stepped onto the porch and looked up. For the first time all day, she appeared genuinely relieved. Reed packed his tools into the truck. He was exhausted, his body felt like it had been hit by a train. But he felt satisfied. The house would survive, and the small payment would buy Nolan a birthday cake. That alone made the day worthwhile. As he prepared to leave, Harriet handed him an envelope. He assumed it contained payment. Instead, inside was a handwritten note, only one sentence. Kindness reveals character when nobody is watching. Reed looked up, confused. Harriet simply smiled. The storm exploded moments later. Rain crashed against the earth, thunder shook the ground, visibility disappeared, driving home became impossible. Harriet insisted he stay until the weather passed. With no safe alternative, Reed agreed. They spent the evening inside the farmhouse while the storm raged around them. The old house creaked and groaned, rain pounded the roof Reed had just repaired. Each time a violent gust struck the house, Harriet would glance upward. Each time, the roof held firm. Hours passed, the conversation deepened. Harriet asked about Reed's dreams, not his problems. His dreams. It was a question nobody had asked him in years. He realized he barely remembered the answer. Eventually, he admitted that he wanted something simple. A stable life. A secure future for Nolan. A chance to stop merely surviving and start living again. Harriet nodded thoughtfully. As if filing away every word. Near midnight, the storm finally weakened, before Reed left. Harriet thanked him again, not for fixing the roof, for treating her with respect. The comment surprised him that he hadn't done anything special. Or so he thought. The next morning, Reed returned to normal life. He picked up Nolan from school, paid a few overdue bills, bought groceries, and yes, he finally bought the birthday cake. For the first time in months, he felt hopeful. Then 3 days later, everything changed. A black luxury vehicle appeared outside his small rental house. Then another. Men in suits stepped out, professional, serious, expensive. Reed assumed there must be some mistake. One of the men approached his door. He introduced himself as a representative from a private family office. Reed had no idea what that meant. The man then asked a question that left him speechless. Had he recently performed roofing work for Harriet Vale? Reed nodded cautiously. The representative exchanged a glance with his colleagues. Then he revealed something that made Reed's knees nearly buckle. Harriet Vale wasn't simply an elderly woman living in an old farmhouse. She was one of the wealthiest private landowners in the state. Her family controlled vast agricultural holdings, energy investments, commercial properties, and conservation land stretching across multiple counties. According to financial publications, her net worth was estimated in the billions. She quite literally owned nearly half the state, and she had personally requested another meeting with Reed Holloway, not as a contractor, but for a reason nobody was willing to explain. As Reed stared at the men standing in his yard, his heart pounded harder than it had during the storm, because something told him his life was about to change forever. And he had absolutely no idea whether that change would save him or break him. If this story is touching your heart so far, share your thoughts below and tell us where you're watching from. Stories like these remind us that kindness often returns when we least expect it. Special request: comment the word kindness if you believe helping others without expecting anything in return is one of the greatest strengths a person can have. Send, continue for part 2, and I'll complete the rest of the story with the emotional ending.